So we're going to wrap up today with a panel that really, there's no slides. We haven't really spent a lot of time talking, but it's a stream of consciousness panel, and it's a subject matter that I've spoken about now at a half a dozen or more conferences, and that is around what really is about this DevSecOps thing, right? And just in way of my background, I've got 15, 20 years in security. I met Gene Kim about 6 years ago, and he showed me what was to became the Phoenix Project. And I said, this is the greatest thing that could ever be for security. And that was the reason I got into DevOps. But I never thought of it as a DevSecOps. I thought of it as DevOps. And when they first started bandying about the term, Shannon Leitz, who's here somewhere, started, DevSecOps.org, and James Wickett, who's sitting over here, right, started something called rugged DevOps, was a term that we were using. I got to be honest with you, I thought it was nonsense, because I thought that there's only one DevOps. And I don't care whether you're security or QA or DBA or dev or ops, it's DevOps. But I also come from the security team, and I spent a lot of time talking to my fellow security folks, and I realized that they had real issues, right? They have a unique use case and a unique vision of the world of IT, and most of you sitting out here are security people, right? If you're a security person, raise your hand. So it's the majority of you, though, look, I'm thrilled to see how many dev and ops people came this year. But we needed to kind of get brought into this equation. And I got to tell you, I still get into major fights on Facebook with some of my friends, like George and Erica and Dr. Anton Travakian, who writes for Gartner. Is this DevSecOps thing's real? And it starts wild fights. It is real. I don't care whether we call it DevSecOps, though that's the name we seem to have settled on, or if you want to call it rugged DevOps. What I do care about is security belongs to DevOps, right? It goes together. We can't have successful DevOps without having security at that table. And we can't have successful security when the world's doing DevOps and we don't want to be part of that equation. So, with that as my premise, let me introduce you to what I think is the best panel assembled on this subject ever. And I'm going to start with, from my far left, she came in. I didn't know if she was making it. My friend Dr. Chenzi Wang. So Chenzi, are you now officially a partner at Raise Capital, the Jane Bond Project? What is it?
I'm a general partner at a new fund, my own fund, I call it Rain Capital. It's an early stage cybersecurity fund headed by a woman. Yay!
Okay, sitting next to Chenzi is my partner in the DevOps Institute and the founder and CEO.
Hi, I'm Jane Grohl, and I am founder and CEO of the DevOps Institute, and we've been doing a lot of research over the past 6 years about practices and principles around DevOps, and certainly the inclusion of security. So really excited to be on this panel to talk about people today.
Sitting next to Jane is Sandra Eskandor O'Keefe. Sandra's flown all the way here from Newfoundland to join us today, and she is with Fastly. Sandra, if you want to.
Yes, I'm a security engineer at Fastly, and I'm looking forward to speaking about the problems with DevSecOps and how we can solve them.
Okay, and then next to Sandra, last but certainly not least, probably one of the first people I heard talk about DevOps at an early DevOps Enterprise Summit, and still one of the most popular speakers, and one of the smartest people I know in the DevOps space, Paula Thrasher of, it's now actually no more.
So, General Dynamics.
General Dynamics.
As of a week.
Joining us. Ladies, women, I'm going to give each of you a chance to kind of lay out your position. The topic is DevSecOps. It's a people thing. Chenzi, I'm going to let you go first. Why is it a people thing, and what do we have to do?
So as you pointed out, security has to be part of DevOps, right? So a bit of my background, I'm also on the global board of OWASP, Open Web Application Security Project. In my previous capacity, I was Chief Strategy Officer for Twistlocker, which is a container security company, one of the earliest security solution providers into the container space. And before that, I was a cloud security. I was in cloud security, and I was a strategy officer for McAfee, and then bunch of other things, including Forrester security analyst. So in my previous capacity, I've seen this change of going from purely enterprise going into the cloud, and by doing that, people are adopting the cloud way of doing things, which is distributed computing, microservices, and naturally led to the development side adopting DevOps, right? And the name DevOps as development ops. Where's security? Security is not in there, right? And in my work with Twistlock, we saw that. We saw a ton of DevOps folks are interested in our stuff, but security wasn't there actually in the beginning. Because security don't get into this space until they say, there are many teams are doing DevOps. We didn't know they were doing DevOps, right? So they kind of tag on behind. And what I would love to see is security becoming sort of a proactive partner in that whole initiative. But in order to do that, security guys, as well as the operational folks, need to change their view of each other, because they tend to have a little bit of conflict. So just not taking up too much time, but a friend of mine used to be a SRE for Amazon, and his duty is keeping the site up, right? And people can buy things. And he said the thing he hates most is security guys walk in and say, hey, you got to install this patch. If you don't install this patch, our customer data is going to be leaked. And he's like, okay, I install this patch, but can you ensure me that things will not go down? They can still buy things. And the security guy will not go that extra step. And he's like, you can't possibly demand me to do things that will negatively impact my job. So I don't want the ops and security guys and also development to get into that impasse. So I think it's as much a technology problem as it is a cultural people problem.
Jane?
So how many of you have seen Game of Thrones? Okay, doesn't IT sometimes feel like the Seven Kingdoms, right? And we all want to sit on the Iron Throne. So I don't come from the security space, I come from the operational side, but I had the privilege of going to one of the early DevOps days. And I've been in IT a long time. And so watching kind of the evolution of IT, we grew up very much like Seven Kingdoms, where, there was loyalties, practices, vocabulary, tooling that didn't integrate between different practices, whether you're operations, security, development, and beyond that. And so in DevOps, we talk a lot about cultural transformation. So that's a term that's thrown around a lot, digital transformation. And the reality is culture doesn't transform, people transform. And so until we all kind of get that getting security involved in DevOps should be very natural. It should be organic, right? You're part of the IT spectrum. You're part of the IT value stream. And so there is no exclusion here. You will transform for a couple of reasons. One, because it's really cool to be in DevOps right now, right? It is a great day to be in technology. I mean, where else do you get to do a job where you get to innovate every single day? So transformation, it shouldn't be scary, it should be exciting. The second thing is skills modernization. We talked to a lot of organizations about skills modernization. And so that's kind of crossing over into the next generation of IT and all of the innovation and disruption that goes with that. And then, looking at this really great panel, the organizations that have been the most successful are the organizations that have done some really innovative things with people. Right, those that have and I know you can all speak to that have really taken some extra steps to ensure trust, to help people grow skills, to really kind of create a value stream that's interconnected. And so it is all about people. You cannot automate people. You can't buy open source people. You can't buy enterprise people. The reality is each of you needs to personally transform in order to be part of this modern age.
Excellent. Sandra?
So a little bit of background about myself. Before I was a security engineer, I actually was a software developer for quite a while. And so I've seen from both sides of that spectrum that, as you mentioned earlier. And I think, and I'm going to echo the previous talk, and I really very much agree that it is about this concept of psychological trust, that in order for us to communicate together, we need to have that fundamental safety so that we can bring up these issues and not feel like it's going to that we're going to somehow get attacked or have issues with our colleagues. And I think also, again, echoing the previous talk, we do, as a security, as our to integrate security into the DevOps process, we do have to communicate better in terms of actionable items that can be fixed. And those are the things that I see from my experience.
Excellent.
So as you know, I work in a very, very large organization. In fact, I guess we just doubled in size now having gotten acquired. When you're talking about changing at scale, I think to the educational point, I'm not just transforming 10 people, I'm transforming hundreds of people, 20,000 people. That's a lot. And we've had various folks say, well, how do you find people? Well, just, spoiler alert, one does not hire 20,000 DevOps people. You can't, right? So it became really important that we figure out how to make people that. And we've spent a lot of time both in partnerships with some of the universities, which I strongly encourage your companies to do. Go talk to your HR manager and find out what universities you hire from, and start talking to those programs about how they're training their college graduates. I have a unique position in the group that I work for in the company that we're part of the development program that our company runs for recent college hires. So every year I get between 20 and 40 recent, fresh out college graduates, and they come work for me first, and then they sort of go through our training program. I've got a dedicated training manager that's training them in the skills that they're not getting in the university system. They're not learning how to use source control, unfortunately. They're not learning how to test. They're not learning secure code practices. And so we have to take, a fresh college hire who's got a lot of potential and give them this apprenticeship model before they're really ready to, contribute in that model. And the nice thing about having the cross-functional teams as well is that they're learning from each other. So they might have been a graduate of a cyber program, and they're next to a graduate of a CIS type program, and they're next to a math major, and they're next to a hardware engineer, and they're all kind of new because they're recent graduates, but they're learning from each other, and we're mentoring them with some more senior engineers that we sort of self-selected to be good mentors. And that's been a really important part of us driving progress forward, because I think the biggest thing is that people don't fail to do this because, they want to come to work and they just want to screw it up. Like, I'm pretty sure most people, insider threat notwithstanding, don't come to work to mess it up, but they don't have the skills to do it the right way. So how are you giving people the skills to do this next generation of automation and technology, and both in the security realm and the ops realm, the dev realm?
Add something to that. I think working with the university is a great idea. There's also, in the DevOps world, there are a ton of local meetups, right? So I used to run the Mountain View Docker meetup. Every month we get together about 100 people. A lot of them are just starting to learn things, and they love for companies to come and run training session, right? If you're in the DevOps security space, it will be great if you can contact the local Kubernetes meetup or Docker meetup and say, hey, can we come and run a DevOps security training session? You bet you'll get tons of sign up, and maybe you'll find some good engineer talent there, and I think that's a great thing to tap into.
So, but you just hit on something, Chenzi. Assuming that the security people want to engage the DevOps groups from Kubernetes or Dockers. Derek Weeks was up here with the results of the Sonatype DevSecOps survey this morning. And the one number that really stuck out to me was in asking DevOps people or dev people, what did they think the security people were? 72% of them viewed security as a nag.
Yeah.
Was the number I saw, right? But I will do a quick survey in this room. How many of us as security people know that those developer people think of us as a nag? And when you, right? And when you keep, it's like raising kids. When you keep telling someone you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb, you're dumb, they start thinking they're dumb. You start telling people you're a nag, you're a nag, you're a nag, you start thinking you're a nag. And you kind of relish being a nag, right? That's your job. I'm a nag. That's what I do. And that, with all due respect, is the problem that we run into here that we've created. Jane's talking about IT. The IT industry is, 50, 75 years old. In that relatively short amount of time, we have so pigeonholed and so siloed out the security team, almost more than dev and ops, more than QA in dev and ops. The security team in many organizations isn't even part of the IT organization, right? It's part of risk, or it answers to a CFO, not a CIO. Or now, we have CISOs, and do they answer to the CEO or to the CIO, or do they just put in an architecture and they get the heck out of Dodge? So I think security presents a special use case, right? Because for so long, security people have been other, and now you're asking them to be, come on in and be part of my team. Well, where were you for the last 50 years, right? And that kind of cultural divide, it's almost ingrained into people, right? When you're a security person, you don't trust that dev guy when he says, yeah, come help me. Right? And so how do we, Chenzi, you probably more than any, well, Sandra too, you guys have dealt with this at organizations. You've seen it at Forrester, I'm sure. What do we do to really make one team here pulling in one direction?
I think look around. Why this conference so big? Why do security people come to DevOps Day? Because they want to expand their skill set. They want to pick up new sort of modern skills. And I saw that a lot when I was running Docker Meetup. There are a lot of security folks come, they want to learn about Docker, they want to learn about DevOps because they see that's their next job opportunity is a security person who has DevOps skills. And I think you should mark it as this is the new sort of generation of how security is going to be integrated into the enterprise tool chain, the enterprise processes, and to be someone whose skill is marketable, you need to pick up those knowledge, those backgrounds, and that means talk to your DevOps teams, go to DevOps Meetup, pick up some books, and download Docker, if you will. I think there's a ton of appetite. The trick is how companies enable that kind of cross-functional team collaboration, and that requires some case-by-case evaluation.
So I think cross-training is a great way for both the dev and ops and security to see what it feels like to be in each other's seats. I very much agree. And I also agree that security and the dev folks and the operations folks do need to communicate with each other as early as possible. And I think those two things are very much key.
Yeah, I think actually building off that cross-training, I don't know if Seth Abrams from my team is here, but to give him credit, he put together a really cool hackathon, and I thought it's an interesting lesson for those of us in the room. So security community has done hackathons for a while, right? That's why it's a hackathon, right? And that's been that whole red hat, white hat, actually, I'm not really a security person, can you tell? Type of event is really common in security. And so we piloted this event where we brought that, and we brought our infrastructure people and our developers. And so we we treated it as an educational opportunity. Learn about the cloud, learn about some security technologies, learn about these things, and then everybody comes together on teams. We sort of place them on teams with people they hadn't worked with before. And you have 24-hour, 2 days basically to, build. We gave them like build a website kind of thing. And that's your project. And by the way, on day 2, we're going to start hacking you. And it was really valuable because the security folks brought that practice of having that, white hat mindset and that kind of thing to the team, and the ops people were fascinated by this. And it was interesting as well. I mean, like the ops people were learning source control from the developers, and so everybody was kind of bringing a contribution sort of from their tribe forward, and it was really interesting. And I think some of the more insightful things that came out of that event, the first one that we ran, was within 12 minutes of spinning up in the cloud, they were already getting scanned by the Chinese, and they were like, oh, I see why security is important. And that was a huge lesson that we needed the developers to learn. And if they hadn't had that opportunity to experiment, and that was what was so great about the hackathon kind of event, is that we gave them a place to experiment and learn. So that's certainly something that I would recommend if you've got a space in your community to bring these different tribes of DevSec and Ops together to collaborate together on the learning opportunity. They'll learn as much from each other as just training in our little silos. That particular event was a real eye-opener for us. We've done 3 of them now, and it's really powerful to get the cross-learning.
Yeah, and Paul, you mentioned the tribes, and so I think a lot of organizations are moving to squad models. And if you think about the definition of a squad, right, a squad is not necessarily homogenous in skills. So a squad is very much a cross-functional team that can actually embed or at least provide that type of expertise inside the team. And, just to kind of address something everybody has said, and, the need to communicate is important, but the need to collaborate is even more important.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't understand the difference between the two. So communicate is very much I tell you and you tell me. Collaborate is I ask your opinion. Right, so I ask you, what do you think about that, or what's your insight, what's your experience, what's your skill, and how can we contribute to that? So really taking much more of a collaboration approach really helps to improve communication, but it also creates that kind of organic relationship because I ask you what you think, I respect your opinion, and because of that, we start to build trust.
How
Fair
many people here? Sorry.
Good, no, good.
How many people here have heard of the term spirit animals? Oh, okay. So have you heard of it in the context of DevOps? Yes? Outside? Okay. So if you ever go to a DevOps-centric conference, not DevOps security, but DevOps-centric conference, tons of people walk around with my spirit animal is this, my spirit animal is this, and this is their thing. And I went to one, and I was like, oh my goodness. So there was a talk given by a DevOps engineer, talk about how DevOps is the unicorn of IT, right? And then the next slide is, here's what security is. You know what security is? Security is unicorn without this. They call security equals to horse.
Yeah.
And that is the attitude because they see security as a gatekeeper and the naysayer. But what I have observed is the DevOps guys, if they actually meet a security person who truly come to understand what is that you're trying to do, what is the requirements behind it, let me help you, as opposed to, oh, let me tell you, you can do this, cannot do this. But let me understand and let me help you, let us work together to make this happen. They actually felt really refreshing. Right? It's not about let me tell you, really is let me learn from you what you're doing, and let's all work together to make this happen. And think about from that mindset, maybe it's an icebreaker or door opener to a good collaboration.
Excellent. We only have about 5 more minutes, so I want to bring up one kind of special use case that I think maybe we'll explore it next year here at DevSecOps Days, RSA, or at other events. And that is the relationship specifically with SRE and security, right? It's almost kind of a special use case. So first of all, how many of you have SRE folks or teams in your organization yet? Not many.
Do you know what SRE is?
Site reliability engineering, right? comes out of a Google thing, but it's real. I believe it's the ops in DevOps, right? And it's kind of the future here. I think there's a unique opportunity for security to work with SRE teams as well, because it's almost more in our traditional wheelhouse, right? Of post deployment, making sure things go. I know Fastly, Sandra, right, has a big SRE team. If you can maybe just say a word or two on that.
Oh, yes. So security, the security team and the SRE folks at Fastly, we basically work together to make sure that we have a good way to perform patch management and asset management, amongst other things.
Jane, you were just at SRE Con.
Yeah, how many of you have never heard of SRE before this very moment? Okay, I thought that might be the case. So Google writes a book called Site Reliability Engineering, and it really spawned a set of practices for operations, similar to DevOps in the sense of it's an engineering practice, and we're really looking at engineering operations from a automation perspective, process perspective, people perspective, sort of the pre-deployment and into operations. It's kind of the simplest, right, way to put that. So I was at SRE Con a few weeks ago, in Santa Clara, and there were about 1,000 attendees. So that's kind of interesting. And I was there last year, and it was mostly like the unicorn space, and this year very much the enterprise space have started to emerge. And it does bring together a lot of operational practices that might have been segmented before. So and again, I don't know, Sandra, if this is the role that you have, but a lot of the people there were engineers. They could code. They did change management, service level management, they managed incidents, they were incident commanders, they handled security, of course, post-production. So they did a lot of the post-production activities in the form of a role. So it actually gives some definition around pre-production, particularly on the security side, and post-production, and starting to create a set of practices. If you want to read the Google book, you can read it free online. If you want to buy it, I think it's $25 from Amazon. You may not be Google. I mean, that's kind of the resonating theme around SRE, is that you may not be Google, but reliability engineering practices seem to be emerging in a lot of organizations.
Yeah, I have to say that, I live here in Silicon Valley, and I talk to a lot of startups that are purely in the cloud native to begin with. And there are several startups here in San Francisco. They've taken SRE principles into just entire operations, right? They have an ops team, no SRE team, because the whole team is SRE.
Right.
And so basically security is part of that. And they tend to have a separate security team just focus on policies and risk, but that's the mindset of security is part of ops, and we all work together to implement the SRE principle. I have a lot of confidence in that model. Now, of course, that's that end of spectrum, and we've got, large enterprise don't even have any SRE is the other end of spectrum, and we've got many shades in the middle, but I really am very hopeful that we're gonna move towards that end of the spectrum where security is real time. You've got feedback loops, you've got real time control, change, and that's how we're gonna get to DevSecOps.
I agree. And I think that's the place where we're going to call it a wrap on this. Guys, it's been an amazing day. Let me first of all say thank you very much to Chenzi, Jane, Sandra, and I just do a blindfold like I never know it. Thank you.